Hello, welcome to another Roster and WebAssembly working group meeting. Got to entertain yourself somehow. Uh, so 6 weeks or RFC triage. No updates here yet.
Uh, I did not get to it yesterday because I had an intense slog of meetings that started at the end of the day. But I will be re-kicking off the WASM pack features for Watch, and there's one other. Anyways, there's an RFC, so we'll re-kick that off and make sure to add it to the next meeting's agenda.
Awesome. All right. So we are now in our final week of sprint, and Ashley has pulled out all of the sprint issues related to WASM pack for the toolchain and workflow polish, so we'll push those for later. I have a search of all of the remaining issues that are not in WASM pack, which I will put below this the agenda. And I think probably the Rayon ray trace parallel example is going to be pushed, or is that already?
It's sort of as done as it can be in the sense that we're waiting on upstream to publish a version using Rayon, but it's so in that sense we've got it all working. It's all proof of concept, it's all implemented, tested, and we just are waiting on that part.
Does it make sense to land the PR with like a Git dependency in Cargo Toml?
That's what it currently has, and I think we could as long as we're fine with CI breaking, because it will. I think they're going to change the Rayon crate a little bit, just the tweaks some interfaces. So if we're cool with that, which I don't really mind one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't know if it's easy to make that thing a like allow fail, but like make the other things not. Then I say go for it. Otherwise, it's not worth it. Let's just wait. That's
all right. I'll look into that.
What else do we have here?
Just a quick mention, Nick. Ilya just mentioned in chat that the link is broken for them.
Okay, yes. So this is what I was talking about, this stupid GitHub policy of not letting people view issues if you're not a member of the organization. So let me add you to the organization. Or actually, you could either Alex or Ashley do that. Yeah, thanks. And I'll just keep running along this list in the meantime.
Quick question.
Yep.
When we say RFC triage, we mean not Glue API RFCs explicitly?
Well, we haven't. Yeah, it's a good question, right? Like, Glue RFCs are a relatively new thing.
I don't want to force your hand to be like, oh, we need to talk about this now, but more like, I feel like we didn't talk about it, so... Oh.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great point to bring up, and we might as well discuss it now. I don't really have a strong opinion either way. A bunch of new people are not here, which is kind of unfortunate. So maybe we should shelve that for next week's meeting, and then hopefully like Rylev and Powen and other folks will also be here.
To that end, one of the things I was thinking about, and I have selfish reasons for bringing it up, but I think it probably is just useful, because Glue has brought kind of like an influx of a bunch of new people in, maybe we should revisit, like, does this time still work for everyone? Because it may be that people are not showing up because the timing really doesn't work for them.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I can follow up with like you and Alex, and we can distribute doodle responsibilities.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Thanks. Okay, so what else is on this list that's not part of WASM pack? Is the perhaps use Chrome's Lighthouse thing to measure time to interactive. I think I'm not going to get this by the next week, and I don't think anyone else has expressed a lot of interest in it, so it's probably going to slide. That seems fine to me. Tracking debug info stuff. How is the progress going on that, Alex?
Okay, in the sense of I started reading some Dwarf stuff, but I'm going to be talking more with Nick this week to get some more information on that. See if we can The goal is just to get something at all working on it all, but I still have to figure out how to like test it and generate it and do anything with it.
Okay.
So very slow progress.
Yeah, it's in flight. It's not just kind of sitting there, which is great.
Yeah.
And Ilya, how goes the WebAssembly futures thread safety stuff?
Hi. I submitted a pair. Thank you, Alex, for reviewing it. I didn't have time to fix the issues, but I'm going to work on it the next week.
Awesome. Okay, so also in flight and potentially will actually make it by the sprint deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So it seems like we're in a pretty good place and we've estimated our amount of work fairly well. We'll see, I guess, looking at the WebAssembly stuff later. But yeah, so why don't we go ahead and move on to status updates. Glue. So the work on Glue stuff has been a little bit quieter this week than last week. I believe the big thing that's going on is we're very close to accepting the file API proposal. And we also switched, instead of doing kind of design proposal discussion in issues, we have switched to saying we're going to do PRs for those. And we're just going to have a little RFCs subdirectory inside of Glue that you make a pull request to do the RFC stuff. And I think
Do you
that's
think
all.
it's something we might want to consider doing for the other projects? Or do you think
I don't
the
know.
other projects are so overarching? Like, I guess WebAssembly and WebAssembly are kind of coupled in like a sort of deep way. So having their design in the same place might make sense.
Like, I think there are certainly like types of feature requests or proposals or stuff that would like benefit from this sort of thing, like kind of like a design only pull request where then people kind of discuss the API and the design and stuff, and then like after that a implementation pull request. The thing with Glue is that like almost everything is that sort of kind of feature request, right? Because like what we're doing is we're designing new APIs from scratch, and that's all we're doing. Whereas like there's a lot more just kind of like maintenance and internal work going on in our other projects.
To a certain extent, WASMPack, like the big work that's happening with it is like new APIs, kind of. If you think like new commands or new config are APIs of a type.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I wonder maybe
there's also like maintenance shit too, but not as much at the moment, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I don't know, like consider like the watch and serve like proposal, like that's an RFC, and I think that's like working pretty well for like being a place to discuss the stuff before we actually implement it. So like I don't know, maybe the question is like, should the Glue RFCs just be normal RFCs, and we should do that design work there?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like both ideas. I think for me though, I'm a little nervous that there's not that many Glue people like in the room right now, and so I don't want there to be this kind of like artificial separation.
Yeah.
We're discussing WebAssembly Watch at the moment, yeah?
Discussing RFC processes and the ways that we've used RFCs for WasmPack with the WasmPack watch stuff, and we're kind of adopting RFCs for Glue. And you know, the idea for the Glue stuff was to be like smaller mini RFCs, but maybe they're just actually the same size. And
I wonder. I've seen the pull request in STD recently merged. I haven't tried it yet. The one which is to build it on top of WasmBinding engine. It's really awesome. Will be there any plans for cargo web integration to build one tool instead of two or something like that. Or probably cross compatibility, something like that, because they already have watch stuff.
Yeah. I don't know if we've ever considered this.
Definitely sounds like something we should talk about in the RFC conversation.
Yeah.
So I would definitely urge you to make a comment on that RFC with that stuff, and we'll definitely take a look at it. I don't know if Cargo Web or Standard Web, like, they don't use WASM pack, and so maybe now that they work on top of WASM bindgen, now there's a question of mending other splits. So I imagine the comment may spin out into several other types of things, but that's probably the right place to start.
Agreed.
Anyways, I think the mini RFCs thing is fine for now, and I just think that if maybe you notice the Glue team kind of like staying off in their own world, maybe we can try and open it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, like, I agree there's like a risk of that kind of like division of community forming, but I don't think it's like the reality right now, because
Oh yeah, I don't think so either. I'm just saying, like, that could be a concern. We should keep an eye on it. But I don't really have strong feelings about it, but that's something I was thinking. Sven had a question, which I actually am kind of interested in too. What would you say the size of the Glue team is right now?
So we have a official team member list right now, which, like, I don't know, maybe we should expand or something, but I think it's myself, Powen, Yash, Rylev, David O'Connor. I think that might be everyone. Yeah, basically it was like people who'd been doing frameworks I invited to come, collaborate, and responded positively, / people who expressed interest in this before we kind of got the whole thing off, / people who've been taking part. And so, like, it's not like an elite club or anything. Like, it's like, if you want to participate, then, like,
oh yeah, totally. I was just curious. I think
be on the list.
I think you were just curious, right?
I was actually afraid that the proper RFC would be quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
For like small-sized teams.
Yeah. So what has been kind of nice is, like, we aren't requiring like our normal RFC process for the whole group, and like the way Rust works is like it has to be everyone, or I guess there was the change to the Rust RFC process where it's like it has to be a majority of people approve and no one disapproves or raises concerns. And what we've been doing is just saying 2. You just need 2 people to sign off with no one registering concerns. And so it's kind of like get involved with the RFCs that you care about and sit out the ones that you don't care about. So hopefully it's a little bit lighter of a load. All right. Any multi-threading updates? I guess we got the multi-threading update earlier.
Yeah, it continues to be the main thing we need at this point, is a possible better library for integrating Rayon. So like some Rayon support that I could pull in and enable it, but we're planning to do more of that once the support actually lands in Rayon upstream. So we're good for now.
Cool.
Oh, and obviously the WASM bindgen features work is ongoing.
Yeah. So Yash, for the runtime stuff that you announced, congrats on and shipping and publishing. My understanding is that once we move to Futures 03 / standard futures, what is currently WASM bindgen futures will be a backend for runtime, essentially. Is this like kind of the way you see things moving?
Good question. I'm not sure what the repo is you just mentioned, so I can't quite answer your question there, but I can tell you what I had in mind, and then you get to tell me if that overlaps.
Yeah.
So what Runtime provides is kind of two things. On the one end, we have an async function main as like the entry point to your application, and you just can like call wait inside of it, and you don't like need to do any other setup, which is quite a step forward from how you do things otherwise. And hopefully that will lead us to eventually, at some point in the future of Rust, actually have like async function main as part of standard Rust. At least that's what we're sort of aiming at to prove that that's a good idea. And the second of all is we provide an abstraction around like different backends to specifically have things like TCP stream, UDP sockets, file system, those kinds of things, which in this case happen to be things that you don't really have in browsers, but you do have in WASI. So does that answer? Let me stop right there. Does that sort of answer your question?
Okay, so what is the so you have this abstraction on top of executor? So like because my understanding was executor kind of thing, or I don't know what it's called in the new features, I guess Waker, was the abstraction over like running futures and async stuff. And so now your abstraction for different backends like Tokyo or whatever includes it's like a superset of Waker.
All right. Let me break down terminology real fast, and I guess
Yeah.
Alex gets to correct me at any point. When we say runtime, it's essentially a combination of two pieces. It's a reactor, which is bindings to the operating system, to file system APIs, socket APIs, that kind of stuff, and an executor, which is responsible for running the futures and being able to like spawn them multi-threaded or single-threaded or however you like them. And those two things together is what we call a runtime. Now, the runtime crate is special is because we're using dynamic dispatch to talk to different backends. So you can use Tokyo's notion of a runtime or Julia's and Romeo's notion of a runtime, depending on your needs. But this can also include like WASI's notion of a runtime or Android or Fuchsia. Though those don't exist yet, but that would be possible. Probably, we think. Yeah. And then when you said Waker, a Waker is in future speak, essentially a callback that you use to be like, hey, I'm ready, and you like my future is ready, state changed. So please execute this again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So WASM Bindgen Futures is the crate that provides an executor for futures on top of browsers or anything that has promises. So it works on Node as well.
Cool.
And so I guess I was imagining that would be part of a backend for runtime.
Right. I think that mapping right now might not be really good, but a thing that could be done sort of separately from runtime is take that idea of an async main function and sort of make that kind of code very similar. So people will have a similar experience in running this kind of stuff. And once WASI gets developed out and maybe even hybrid environments, we get to revisit this and be like, okay, maybe this is a good candidate to build that runtime on.
Okay.
This makes sense to everyone.
I do suspect that we're going to have a runtime for WASM Bindgen, which only implements the executor and continues to return errors for everything like the file system and all that. I suspect we'll probably also have one for WASI, which will probably not have an executor because it doesn't have any async APIs, so it can't actually do anything there. But it could have like stuff for other things. I mean, WASI probably needs async anything before we do that with the runtime business. But I mean, we could polyfill things on the unknown website of like the WASM Bindgen side of things as it becomes available, like if this file system, if this networking. But so I think like it kind of depends on like we can certainly provide an executor, and I think our job once features are stable in the state of library is we're going to need to provide an executor for state of library features in WASM by Gen, but that won't be too hard to do.
Okay.
Wait, so if I'm understanding you correctly, a very feasible thing to do would then just be to provide this like a backend for runtime that just panics if you call any of the system methods, and we yeah, all right.
I presume there's some trait in runtime saying like here's everything you have to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, for WASI, we wouldn't even bother because nothing's async, and for WASM, we do all the executor stuff and then just return errors from everything else because you can't really do. Or we could even have like feature flags saying like pretend a WebSocket is TCP or something like that. Like with I know that
all right.
Like, Scripton has a bunch of polyfills here, so we could presumably map those polyfills, and like maybe there's like a virtual file system that it reads, or like anyway, we could like slot in whatever we want there.
Right, that sounds awesome. I'm going to reserve that name and do something with it. Yeah, just quickly.
I'll reserve it first.
No, I've already. No, kidding. Sorry, gathering my words. Yeah, what I'm thinking, because this is kind of like, hey, it's both async and it's WASM and it's both the working groups. I think kind of like a natural place for this to live would be under the runtime repo itself as just another backend. But if anyone wants to contribute or is like, hey, I'm interested in like helping out, like just let me know and I'll add you. And even make like a separate team that we can like just be like the WASM team of the async or whatever. But
I imagine there's already like I was reading it, and the default is like a native runtime. But there's some default runtime which does everything reasonably, and I would imagine that for WASM this would probably just be the default. I mean, like either a WASM binds and roasted web style thing, like just there's some default for WASM which does returns errors and returns and executes features.
Yeah, definitely sounds good. All right, that's been super useful. Thank you.
All right, debugging updates. I guess we already kind of got a little bit of that as well.
In progress. That's pretty much it.
Source locations. Cool. All right. And now to the big tree of bullet points.
Yeah. So the cool thing about our progress in WASM Pack right now is that we have a bunch of PRs open, and I think all of the PRs are basically at like 80% done or higher. The big thing that is like clogging up all the pipelines, and I will take complete blame for this, is I am just feeling incredibly stuck on how to test the generate command, and I have not been giving myself enough time to really figure it out. So if there's someone who's interested in just being like, at least leaving some comments, I got a bunch of really good feedback on the PR and that stuff in general, and I've totally implemented all of that, and I just really need some feedback on like a testing strategy here, because our general like fixture structure, like the generate command is kind of different than all of our other ones because it doesn't operate on stuff that already exists. It like creates a bunch of new things. And I don't want to be testing cargo generate. So like the only thing to test here is like, does the command exist, and like, does it take the right variables or like give an error if they're not given? I'm probably overthinking it, but if someone wants to like hop in there and just be like, having one other person to talk about it with would probably help unstick it. Moving on from that one, I really, part of me wants to just be like, I'll do a testing PR later because that is blocking the WASM opt PR from Alex, which I think is pretty much ready to go. And then right after landing it, I'm going to adapt just a little bit of what it's doing with the binary install to use the new generalized binary install, which is in the cargo generate PR. For the future, I probably should not have slammed generalizing that logic and a new command into the same PR, and now it's like 2,000 lines, but this is where we are. Then there are two other open PRs that are for this sprint. One is from a new contributor, which is in response to the issue you filed, FitchGen, about being able to recurse up to find a cargo toml so you can like run cargo or WASM-Pack tests like not from root, which is a very good feature. I wish that cargo format had this. It would be amazing. So if you are maybe available, FitchGen, to give that a review. Otherwise, I can definitely take a look at it, but my primary concern is this generate PR and this WASM-Up PR. And then Alex just filed this test filters for WASM-Pack test. Those test docs, I believe, are in this weird hybrid state of WASM-Bindgen and WASM-Pack. So I think just some really preliminary just interface docs for that, and we can get that landed.
Yeah, I'll do it once over and make sure it's all still makes sense.
Cool. But otherwise, the PR itself looked fine. Then what is left in the sprint? So there's a couple of things. I have like the start of an NPM dependencies thing, but I've been blocking on it because of this cargo generate shenanigans, but I'm going to push ahead today and do that. That I think it's actually like incredibly straightforward. So thank you to WASM-Bindgen folks for like making that a relatively pleasant thing to do. One thing that I feel like is going to slip, and I have been kind of raising that I think it's going to slip, is this isomorphic JS target. I'm very happy if somebody else wants to take that on, but I would assume that because we haven't documented the design terribly well, whoever picks it up, if it is not like Alex Fitzgenerai, should probably try and talk to Alex Fitzgenerai. But at this point, I don't know how people feel, but I would be willing to let it slip and make it the top priority for the next sprint. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
Sounds good.
We'll certainly have enough features in this to make the release feel pretty full. So there's like a lot of new functionality. And then there's like two kind of small, very JS focused features that I had tagged on this sprint. One is the npm install package. And the other one is our install page is using logic that like I think is like very good. That's like kind of always been like sort of cut and paste to all the install pages, I think, Alex. I don't know if that's true. But it doesn't call out like that cargo install is a thing we could do. And like it just could use a little cleanup. Again, these last two I don't think need to be in the sprint. But if we've got people with like vague JS chops that are like looking to contribute, like these two I think are like super quick wins. That would be like a great way for people to get involved. So I'll probably try and tweet something out, but like if you have people, like please direct them in this direction. This is like, I don't imagine they could take very long, and I'd be happy to like mentor whoever wants to do it. So. And yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. So I feel very confident that all the things that are open PRs and the NPM dependencies will land. These last three are the ones that I'm kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts.
My thoughts are like, we should be fine with these things slipping since there's so much going on in the other stuff, and like, I don't know, should focus on just getting the stuff that's in flight done well.
Cool. Great.
I'll follow up as well on the cargo generate PR with some ideas for tests.
Cool. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I can review that cargo toml thing.
Cool. Yeah, I took like a quick glance at it, but I've been trying to orchestrate and get the other things done.
Okay. All right. Any WASM-Bindgen updates from that side of the tool chain?
No. Not that I know of.
I'm going to throw, there's, our reverser has another speed up for string related stuff, which is about passing strings from JavaScript into WASM. And I don't know, it's a real nice win. I think it's like 80% faster in Chrome than using text encoder. for ASCII strings, which it turns out most strings, well, at least many strings are ASCII. So yeah, shout out. No updates for monitoring, profiling, and testing infrastructure, as far as I know. Actually, there is an update. So we've had this long kind of split due to the way that WASM bindgen test was designed, where like in order to get something running, we need to generate different bindings depending on if you're testing in Node versus testing in a browser. And so like in order to get that up and working, the original implementation was like, here's a like wacky macro that like enables running this in browsers instead of Node. But then like kind of the UI experience we want, users to use, or the user experience we want to have is like, I type wasm-pack test, which thing do I want? And so that was kind of like what we made when we first added wasm-pack test. But like it turns out we're in this weird state where you actually have to do like both things together. And so Alex made a PR that's on the way to reconciling those things, where you can say, I only want to run these tests. You can tell wasm bindgen test, I'm only intending to run tests on Node, or I'm only intending to run tests on the web. And so the wasm-pack test command can use this to tell wasm bindgen test what its intentions are. And we can kind of reconcile those things. So yeah, that will need a real small, quick PR to wasm-pack after that land.
Wait, do you mean is this different than the test filters PR that Alex already opened?
It's the same one.
Oh, okay, cool. I was like, I feel like that's the thing that I said. We just need to make sure the doc still makes sense.
Okay, my bad. I was thinking of filtering test cases. Not,
I was playing fast and loose with language when I wrote that bullet point. I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay.
This does remind me, though, in terms of the motivation for this was actually coming from StudWeb, and it's worth pointing out just as an official under the toolchain point. StudWeb now has support, I think, published on Crates.io for wasm bindgen, and so if you depend on StudWeb and use wasm bindgen, it should just work with zero action on your part. I think there's
also the default now, right?
It depends on the toolchain you're using. If you use Cargo Web, it's not the default, but if you don't use Cargo Web, it is the default to use wasm bindgen. And so kind of, if you type wasm-pack build, you can use StudWeb. If you type Cargo Web build, I'm sorry, I'm not super familiar with the toolchain there. I'm not sure if the wasm bindgen stuff works inside of Cargo Web. It might still just be only StudWeb stuff works in Cargo Web, but that might be something we can work towards eventually. But at least in this case, if you type wasm-pack build, you can depend on StudWeb, and it should work just fine.
Yeah, I think this is kind of similar to what Ilya was bringing up earlier, which is like, maybe it's time for us to reach out to the Cargo Web people now.
Yeah, I think that's probably the next logical step here, is just see if we continue to improve integration.
Are the Cargo Web people different from the StudWeb people?
I don't believe so. I think they're the same people.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
Yeah, cool. All right. Yeah. So do you want to talk about informal office hours, Ashley?
Yeah, sure. So this meeting is very structured. We have this lovely agenda and we go through the points. But there's also a lot of just kind of cool things going on in the WebAssembly space. And while we do have office hours, doing it immediately after all of this, like, let's get the work done thing, isn't always like the best affordance for like, let's chat about like cool stuff that's happening in WebAssembly. So like the other day, like Fitchen, Alex, and I got to talking about like the dynamic linking stuff, and we're like, hey, it'd be really cool if we created space for us to do it, as a full group. And so we kind of came up with this idea of like, maybe we can have a meeting that is like different than this meeting, I don't know, like monthly or something, where it's really more just for like unstructured, like people can come ask questions, but like maybe Fitzgen comes with a question and we just all kind of have a conversation. I don't know what people think about that, or if they think that would be fun or interesting.
And I think
After that.
In terms of timeline, I think we were initially thinking maybe like a once a week kind of, or sorry, once every other week kind of thing, for like, and just kind of getting on a call for an hour and not really having an agenda. Just if anyone wants to chat about stuff, we can just chat.
Yeah, I think like the observation to make is that like our office hours are not really being leveraged that much. And maybe that's because of kind of what you mentioned, Ashley, that like we're very, we have all this like stuff that we need to get through. And then like by the time we get to office hours, it's like maybe a bit intimidating, or like the vibe isn't right anymore for just like hanging out and asking questions or chit-chatting about WASM or Rust stuff. So yeah, I think also like we can also evolve kind of what we're after as well. Like I think it's nice to just like have a time to hang out and just talk and like get to know people a little bit who like we end up interacting with without seeing each other's face or hearing each other's voices or whatever. Yeah.
Folks can bring beers to the meeting too, virtually.
Yeah.
Physically, I would love to have a beer in my hand.
Or a mate.
Isn't it noon there?
It's 10:40.
It depends on. Oh no, I'm actually on the West Coast now at this point, but it depends on the time of day. We just have to schedule it right. If it...
Yeah. We'd have two meetings, one in the morning, one in the evening.
Yep.
Depending, I guess, which morning and evening. Anyway, okay, so it seems like we have general consensus that we should try this sometime. I don't know. We'll throw up a doodle somewhere and make it happen.
Yeah, I'll make a doodle about the meeting that we have to have about making doodles.
Nice. All right. Next up, where to route folks looking to hire Rust and WebAssembly folks.
Yeah, so I guess I had actually completely missed that we've like kind of already done this before, but I had somebody reach out to me on Twitter being like, I really want to hire like people who are working like with the Rust and WebAssembly tool chain for like my company. And I was like, that's cool, but I wasn't really entirely sure how people felt about advertising that stuff, like if it should go in the weekly, or like if retweeting that stuff is cool, or we maintain a list somewhere. And so yeah, I just want to get a general vibe. I think that for adoption of this tool chain, it could be really powerful to say, not only are we like doing cool stuff, but we're so legitimate that people want to hire people who use this. Seems cool. I don't currently sense any type of like conflict of interest, but I know this can be like a tricky thing. So just wanted to get people's vibe. And the straw man proposal was have them just comment with those job stuff on the like news issue, and just include it in the weekly, maybe in its own section, but whatever.
I think the one time we did it before, it was in its own section, but like I haven't been posting like a section with like none today or like none this week in the newsletter. And I don't know, maybe it's worth doing that. The other question I have is like how long to keep the things there. Like what I like about the newsletter is like at least a policy that is easy to implement and keep track of is like we'll post your thing on the next newsletter, and then like that's it, right? We're not going to keep posting it until you fill your position or something.
I guess I feel like kind of mixed about it. The first thing, just to address the first comment you made, is like I think for newsletters in which we do not have a job posting, we shouldn't post a section that says none, because that does the opposite of having one that has stuff in it, which goes, look, no one's hiring for this, which is not a message we want to send. But I think having it in its own section does at least call out that there is a thing of this type, which people might not be expecting. And then I think what I would do, and it really depends on how obnoxious people start being about it, but since we have the opportunity where I think it's kind of like a small group of people who are trying to just do the right thing, which is like if they post it on their thing on the news issue and we say it'll go out in the next weekly, if they like don't fill the role, they could like post it again to the news thing like a month later and just be like, would you run it again? I don't think I'd be opposed to that. I think I'd start getting mad if like we start getting recruiter spam on the news issue, which is like I think a legitimate threat. But I mean, also maybe indicative of like a good problem to have. Like people think it's worthwhile. I don't know. Those are like my general thoughts. I don't feel like terribly strongly about any of it. So
I can share some experience which I saw in Elm community. They have Slack, and there is a topic jobs. It is moderated, and they have rules. And they just check that people who post jobs, they follow the rules. And similarly, probably we can have a Discord chat, so people could post offers there, and just someone could moderate them or report if someone is getting too spammy or something like that. So they just post a job description and several important aspects. For example, is it remote friendly or location or something like that. Just some key features which should be required, and just limit the amount of information to not get too big messages.
Those guidelines seem really useful. So, I mean, maybe what we could do, since there's like the news issue, maybe if we open a jobs issue and just like the body of the issue is, I mean, I would love if we just, I have no problem just taking exactly what Elm does and using that. Sounds like it's working well. Just put that in the issue and then have people comment. And GitHub has like good moderation stuff. So if people are goofing, like we can block and delete their stuff.
Yeah.
I think
people to like clean up their posts after they fill the role. Like it seems like something that would be easy to forget.
I mean, I guess the thing I was thinking is, so the first thing was, I think we have more people reading the newsletter than we have in Discord. That could be wrong. I think we have more people looking at the GitHub than we have in Discord. Could also be wrong there. But my expectation was that this was be kind of like the news issue where like, we don't like clean up the news, right? Like
I hide everything after I publish it, which is
so that's probably what I would do is like once it gets published, like it just gets hidden, and if they want to post it again, they would just make another comment.
All right. Does anyone want to like step up and own making this issue thread and like figuring out the rules and the template and all of that?
I would be happy to do it, Ilya, if you could just send me the rules that Elm uses.
I will review their requirements and share it with you.
Awesome. That would be super great. And Nick, you mentioned something about a template.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just thinking like you were saying, is it remote friendly? Is it, what's the location, etc.
Yeah.
Like it's always nice to just have that in like, you know, a text box people can copy paste and just fill in the.
All right. Yeah, I'll do that too. Cool. I was like, wait, for a second I thought maybe we had like completely miscommunicated and you expected people to like pick a special type of issue, like a GitHub issue template. And I was like, oh no. I was like, I don't want to recommend that.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
First WASI spec meeting link.
You can.
Did you have anything you wanted to bring up other than just let us know that the WASI spec meeting was happening, Yash?
Nope. That was the whole goal. So
Awesome.
people know what's happening, and there's a sign up link. I think I linked there. Yep, I did.
This is where the WYSI subgroup of the CG now officially has a chair, officially has a charter, and officially is more official, I think, basically. And so this is the first meeting of the subgroup to start discussing, and I imagine, and the chair, and I think Sam as a co-chair will be having an agenda, so we actually have something to talk about, or something structured to talk about, as opposed to go figure things out.
Sam who?
Sam Clegg. Sam Clegg works at Google and has been working on LLD. So a lot of the like basically the reason everything in Rust works is because of LLD. And so Sam's been doing a lot of cool stuff in WebAssembly.
That's Dan. Anyways, yeah, no, that's cool.
SBC 100 or 1000 or something. Yeah.
Sven is typing this out for me right now.
Nice. All right. Well, that's the end of our agenda items. And we have no office hours items unless anyone wants to throw something out there.
You had previously mentioned to me that Mscripton was starting to do some dynamic linking stuff. There's the working group, the community groups like Doc, which is not really been updated recently. Do you have any links for like where that stuff's happening, or is it just spoken conversation so far?
Let me get the repo.
Actually, the document in the tool convention has been updated a couple of days ago.
I think you said 20.
Yeah, 20 days. But it's actually only a planning. It's I couldn't see updates in like ECMAScript and RVM stuff. It's only planning, but it's written in the document. There is
stuff going on in LLVM. I know that like the LLVM tip of tree right now, we have to compile differently in Rust because otherwise everything gets really weird. So something has happened there, and stuff is happening there. But I suspect that what is in LLVM tip of tree is the source of truth of what wants to happen. The dynamic linking document in the tool conventions repo I linked there might reflect some historical snapshot of what LLVM does, maybe pretty recent, maybe not super recent. But for more news about what's going on with dynamic linking, you'd have to get in contact, I think, directly with the Mscripton folks, or just like with the people working on that, because they're going to know way better than I am about what their use cases are, what their targets are, things like that.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Anything else?
Cool news thing that I just saw on Reddit today was apparently Mozilla has granted a Moss grant to the Amethyst project in Rust. So I believe Amethyst is a game engine written in Rust, and so they have a grant to get better WASM support for that. So that's exciting, and maybe we can start seeing some cool Rust games on the web.
Yeah, that's super awesome.
Yeah.
Do we know if Amethyst, like what WASM toolchain they're using, or are they using the stuff that we work on, or?
I don't think they had any before. I've used Amethyst a little bit, and yeah, it was something that they've been wanting to do, but I don't think they had actually made any effort like in one direction or another. So
maybe we should invite them to a meeting, and we can like do a special office hours, or like one of these informal things that's just like Amethyst and Rust WASM hang out.
I think for graphics, at least, they're using GFX-RS. And so I think they have this whole like abstraction layer, and so they would need to implement a WebGL backend for that, which I'm sure they've been thinking about. I don't know.
There's a PR on a couple of repos, or two different repos, that are kind of major progress on this. I think the one on GFX, or a different one, uses StudWeb. The other one uses WASM BindGen. They're both very, very old and outdated at this point. So I think the goal is to kind of get this up to speed. But I do think you're right in terms of like it's the GFX layer that needs a lot of support, and then probably extra tooling and whatnot.
And like WinIt, right?
Yes.
Like
those are the two, GFX and WinIt.
Yeah.
There is an interesting thing about support for different backends. Like there are a bunch of engines which support compiling to WASM and supporting WebGL through STDWeb. And now when STDWeb landed support of WASM engine. It's an interesting thing.
Yep.
The Amethyst community is on Discord as well. I'm in channels right now, so if you guys want, I can just pop a message in there and see if folks are interested in setting up a meeting.
We had 5 more minutes. Invite them. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Cool.
we want to have a meeting with them right now.
Guys, you need to jump on this call immediately.
Really.
Yeah, no, I think, Anthony, that'd be great if you just like reach out and be like, we've been wanting to do like more informal Rust WASM stuff. Maybe we could do like a hangout that's just games.
Cool, I'll do that.
Anything else? Anything else?
Jesus.
Wait, I didn't know we were bringing props.
That was awesome.
This is the only thing in the room.
Nice. Who can hate on succulents, though?
It's true.
All right. Thank you all for coming, and see you next week. Have a great week.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.